for promotion or a competitive fellowship in the next couple of years, or whether you actually might be supporting someone in that process. So we'll just give a couple more minutes for everyone to get on board, but hopefully you're all able to answer that question. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to start speaking slowly as I can see many, many people flocking into the session. And it's absolutely fabulous to have you all back. And when I scan the list of attendees, there are many familiar names that I see and some new names as well, which is fantastic. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Professor Sharon Parker, and I'll be leading you through the session today. So you've got a question up there about whether you're likely to apply for promotion or a competitive fellowship in the next couple of years, or whether you might be helping somebody to do so. And I guess that sort of signals pretty clearly what our topic is today, which is that we're going to have this deep dive into the world of promotions. So I'll be speaking today mostly from the perspective, first I'm going to share a little bit of research, but I'll mostly be speaking from the perspective of having helped people with promotion over many years. And indeed at UWA, I was the chair of the University Promotions Committee for a few years. So that really gave me insight into the broader processes of promotion. So let me move on to our slides. So just as usual, I love to see your face if you feel comfortable to share, but just turn off your microphones. Today I'm on the land of the Whadjuk people here from the Noongar Nation in Perth, Western Australia, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So do feel free to share on the chat the land that you are on today and that you pay your respects to. I'm so happy today we have two wonderful panel members. First, we have ARC Laureate Fellow Yolanda Yetton, and some of you will know her and some of you will have seen her in this series before. And she's going to bring enormous insight and wisdom into this topic. And we also have Professor Amy Tian, who'll be joining us. She is a colleague from Curtin University, and I invited Amy because I know that she was very recently promoted to professor, and I thought that it might be nice for you to hear from someone who's just recently gone through that process. So I'm going to start with, as usual, a little bit of research, and then I'm going to share with you some tips from my own perspective. And thank you, everybody. We've got people here from Gadigal country, Darug country, all sorts of different lands across Australia. So let's begin with a little bit of research. So what I've tried to do is find as much evidence as I could about what is it that predicts promotion success for academics. And I've not done a comprehensive lit review here, so it is a little bit not selective, it's a little bit quick and dirty, let's say. The first thing is there is a lot of evidence, and we've talked about it before in this series, that one of the things that helps to get promoted is actually not being female, or to put it conversely, actually there's quite a lot of evidence that for women, women are less likely to be promoted and less likely to be promoted as quickly. And there's a fair bit of evidence on that. And I'll talk about perhaps some of the reasons about that later. Other minority groups like people of particular race also are factors here as well. I do want to note, though, that in my journey to look at this research, I did find quite a recent study looking at German professors, actually. And this showed that for German professors, actually, there's no gender difference. In other words, women are just as likely to get promoted. And in fact, in that study, women's papers were even more counting towards their success. Whereas in a lot of the other literature, there's sort of this evidence that women need to have more papers and so on and so forth in order to get the same level of success, but not in this study. So I'm not sure whether it's something unique to Germany or whether it's a more recent phenomena. But I thought it was interesting, and I thought I should share that with you to just so that we can recognise that, yes, whilst on average there are some particular challenges for women, there are differences too. That they might be country, they might be discipline, they might be university. So we don't always see the exact same pattern. I thought this was an interesting paper that I thought I'd share with you about the power of socioeconomic status, actually. And this, interestingly, was a big survey of all different disciplines, STEM, social science and humanities. And you can see it's published in Nature, Human Behaviour. This found that faculty, faculty in these universities are 25 times more likely to have a parent with a PhD. I have to say that was pretty fascinating to me. And if you then go to the more prestigious universities, this rate is nearly double. So 50 times more likely to have a parent with a PhD. And you can see that quote there. So this is interesting that, you know, socioeconomic status, you know, may be a little bit of a factor as well. Now, of course, a lot of this research shows that research productivity is really, really important in driving promotion success. And there's quite a few studies of that. This is another paper I found, which I found quite interesting. This is actually about the invisibility of service. We've talked about that before in this series. First of all, there's a lot of research that shows that women are expected to, you know, because it's stereotypically, you know, putting little quotation marks here, it's sort of women's work. So women are expected to be doing more of those service roles in university. And then there's evidence that it doesn't particularly contribute to performance assessments and so on. So you don't sort of, as a woman, get any brownie points for doing this type of work because it's expected. Whereas men, when they do this sort of work, they do get brownie points. So there's sort of that research already. And this is a study that looked at how that actually the sort of invisibility of service can be a barrier for women and women of colour in universities for promotion. And I want us to come back to that later, because what we need to be doing is making the service work more visible and being really clear about its impact. So we'll come back to that later. There's a few studies on this idea of the Matilda effect, which is this idea that women don't get as many of those things like academic awards, funding and so on, for all sorts of reasons, bias being one of them. And then if they do get those things, they're not given as much sort of kudos as they are for men. So there's various studies on this Matilda effect. This is another interesting study. Actually, this was not just unique to academics, but I thought it was interesting. So this is a study looking at 28,000 women in US retail. And I don't know if you've ever been part of those things where your sort of talent, your potential is rated. And, you know, that means you often go into these sort of accelerated talent types of programs. But anyway, this study showed that women receive lower potential ratings, even though they get high performance evaluations. So somehow or other, there's something perhaps around the future expectations for women that might be being compromised a little bit. This is not based on reality, because the study showed that when women have got the same potential ratings as men, they actually perform better than men. So again, we will talk about this very soon. You know, if there may be this little bit of tendency in some circumstances to not see the potential that women have, we maybe need to be being really, really strong about that in our promotion applications. And then, of course, there's other factors that come into play and that are highlighted in this research. So just to give one more example, this is a Danish study looking at promotion and so on in STEM fields, and they find this female disadvantage. But when they look at what explains why women are not advancing as quickly, they find that some of it's to do with variations in publishing, some of it's to do with parenthood and parental leave, which we know, and this is why we have rope in ARC applications and so on. But that explained only about 40% of the gap. So what they're saying here is that there are other factors that probably explain this gender gap when it comes to promotion. Might be recruitment disparities, asymmetries in social capital, which is just a very fancy way of saying, men tend to have more social capital and networks and so on. Experiences of unequal treatment at work, these sorts of factors could also play a role. So, having sort of thoroughly depressed myself with this research, I thought, let's turn to say, okay, what can we be doing ourselves as individuals and also as people who are, in the system and shaping the system? What can we be doing to turn this around? And so I'm going to introduce what I'm calling a fresh approach, and you'll see why it's a fresh approach in a minute. And first of all, before I go into that though, I would like to acknowledge that I downloaded Anne Wilhasing's book, Professor Anne Wilhasing from Middlesex University, and you can see it right there. And a lot of what I'm going to say is a combination of what she has said plus some of my own experiences. So anyone who wants to go for promotion and wants to go a little bit deeper, I thoroughly recommend this book. I think it cost about $13 to download. So please do have a look at that. Right, so let's go for our fresh approach. So the first component of this fresh approach is F for a future focus. So this is something that is really, really important. And I've seen this, I've sat on the Laureate selection committee a few times. And, there's a tendency for some applications to read like, I've done all these amazing things. I deserve a laureate to be recognised for my amazing things. But a laureate and a promotion is not really about what you've done. Of course, it's got to be based on your achievements, but it's really about what are you going to do in the future? Because remember, the university is going to be, if they're promoting you or if you're getting a laureate or any other fellowship, they're making a huge investment in you. And what people want to know is that investment is going to pay off. So it's about what are you going to do with your promotion or your fellowship into the future. So I know that others are going to pick up on this point. So I won't say too much more, but I think that's a mindset shift that some of us need to make. It's not about a reward for the past. Yes, it is partly, but it's really about why do I need this promotion to do the things that I want to do into the future. The R in the fresh model is to do your research. So this cannot be underestimated. And actually, some of the questions that people asked, and in fact, I've got them here, like what are the requirements regarding a promotion, let's say from A to B, such as how many papers need to be published? We can't answer that question. We can answer that question for our university and our discipline, probably. And even then we'd be a little bit like, well, this and this, and it depends on all sorts of things. The only way you can answer that sort of question is to do your research. So what are the criteria in your university, and what does that criteria look like applied to your discipline? Because in science, I don't know, people in science, you can tell me, but you might publish 10 papers a year, and that might be the norm. Absolutely no one in our field would publish 10 papers a year. So they're completely different expectations according to discipline. So do your research, make sure you know what the criteria is, but go further. I mean, who's going to be on the panel? Who's going to be, if you're going for professor, you need to know who is on the promotion committee panel. Who's been successful lately? What does their application look like? So do your research and then use that knowledge to tailor your application to fit. So even this question here, I'm returning from parental leave and feel I'm on the cusp of being competitive. What advice would you give to academics returning from parental leave who are being told to wait? My advice would be, you need to really do your research. So you need to know, and you need to gather information, all this sort of information, but also talk to other people. So you need to know, is it reasonable to be told to wait? Is that actually quite reasonable? Or in fact, actually, have you got the evidence and stuff there? So you're not going to answer that question without really going a bit deeper into what are the specific expectations in your discipline and your university. So that's the R of the FRESH model. Do your research on the process. E is for evidence everything. So research, teaching, leadership, impact. What we don't want to see in promotion applications is these sort of, or fellowship applications, is sort of assertions that are not backed up by some sort of evidence, like, oh, I'm the most well-known person in Australia in this field. Well, what is the evidence that that is so? Are you being invited to keynote talks, or have you got a major fellowship or whatever? So I think you've got to show let's take research. So obviously there are some obvious metrics that are often used for evidence. And of course, again, these differ by discipline, right? But things like H-index, number of journal articles, quality of journal articles, authorship order, all those sorts of things can be part of your evidence. But there might also be things like, and I'm going to talk about the importance of this good stuff file later. There might even be things like, you might have submitted a journal article and you might have had a very positive comment, or you might have had an email from a colleague or somebody famous in the field who wrote to you because they really loved your work, or you might have had your article reprinted in a special collection or something. All sorts of different things. All those little things can also be part of the evidence that you create. I think one of the particular challenges is, how do you evidence things like sitting on a committee? And what promotion committees are looking for here is evidence that you actually had an impact on the committee, not just that you sat on the committee. So try to be as specific as you can about what you did and the impact of what you did. So in a sense, I said before that maybe a lot of the service work that women are expected to do in organisations can be more invisible. Make it visible. So let me just give you some examples, and this comes from Anne Wilhasing's book. This is an example. I led a major review of the department's PhD program and have already implemented many of its recommendations. For the first time since inception of the program, PhD students now receive substantial resources for conference attendance. I also ensured that all PhD students were provided with the facility to create their own homepages. So what this person is doing is not just saying, I did a review, but what impact did that review actually have? Here's another example. As an ECR member of the research committee, I solicited feedback actively from other junior staff so that I could represent their perspective. Now, isn't that a good thing to say? Because you would have done that, but we might not think to say that. But that's actually an important part of carrying out that role effectively. You're there to represent the voice of other people. I also volunteered to investigate our institution's journal ranking and so on. So again, you see, it's not just about I sat on the committee, but what did you do on the committee and what impact did it have? And just one last example. As a result of my research into journal rankings, the school changed the journal rankings that it used. This led to blah, 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 blah. So just try to keep that impact focus. And I guess this reminds us, if you're sitting on the committee, have an impact. There's no point sitting on a committee if you're not going to have an impact. Honestly, I think that you're wasting your own time. And we talk about this a lot, right? How do we fit everything in? And that's one of my things is never, ever sit on a committee unless you're going to have an impact, because otherwise you're wasting your time. So that's E, evidence everything. The S in the FRESH model is for storytelling. And this is about the importance of a narrative. And partly this is about making it more interesting for the poor old reviewers to read. You read hundreds of these things if you're on a committee, and you don't just want to read a big list of things. You want to understand the story and the uniqueness of the person. And I'm going to leave that one because I know. Oh, and of course, connect your story to the university as much as you can. So, if you've always had a passion around, I don't know, innovative teaching, try to connect that story to the university's aspirations and vision in that area. And now I'm going to go to the H part of the model. And as you can see, by this point, I was struggling with my acronym of FRESH. So what does H stand for? H is homage to you. So what I want you, hoarding. So what I want you to do is to hoard all of those little homages that come to you, those nice emails, those positive, rare positive comments in reviews, any little piece of evidence that basically says you're doing something good and you're recognized. Reviews from comments from students, anything that basically acknowledges and respects you and your work. And I want you to hoard them and keep them in a nice little file or folder. And Will Harsing calls this a good stuff file on your desktop. So just have it on your desktop so you can quickly drag things into there. And one of the other good things about this, and as I say, ruthlessly hoard those small achievements. Not only does this mean you've got it ready when you go for promotion, but every now and again when you're feeling miserable, because remember our last one was all about rejection, and we talked about that emotional roller coaster that academics live on. When you're in one of those down periods and you're feeling miserable, you get them out and you read them and it helps you to feel better about yourself. So your hate is for homage to you. So that is my fresh approach, with thanks to Anne Wilharsing for her insights as well. Have that future focus, do your research, evidence everything, tell a story, and hoard those homages to you that you get. And on that note, I am absolutely delighted now to introduce our next two speakers, or our panel. First of all, I have ARC Laureate Fellow Yolanda Yetton, who some of you hopefully have seen before on this series. And she is an ARC Laureate Fellow and a Professor of Social Psychology, also head of School of Psychology at the University of Queensland. After we've had Yolanda, we're going to hear from Professor Amy Tian, who's a Professor of Management here at Curtin University. And because she's recently been promoted, she's going to share some of her quite fresh experiences. So I'm going to stop sharing and we are going to go to you now, Yolanda.
All right. Thank you, Sharon. That was a great overview. And there are a few things that I also want to touch on, but I'll keep it short when we're overlapping too much. So thank you guys all for joining. What I thought today is to do today is not so much to talk about my own promotion, but that happened a long time ago, and that was also in the UK. It's a different context. It's not so relevant, I think. But what I do want to sort of do, just like Sharon did, is to talk a bit more about I worked with many people who were thinking of going for promotion and trying to help them to get ready for that interview and get their materials together. But also more recently as head of school, working, of course, with a lot of people in my school, in the School of Psychology, on determining whether they're ready for promotion. If they are, how can they present themselves in the best possible way? But I'm also on the committee, and that is, I think, going back to one of the points that Sharon made, know your committee. In my case, and that is perhaps not where it goes, it's not like that everywhere, but it's in our faculty, we have 6 schools, and it's the 6 heads of school together with the dean who form the committee. And that, of course, is a particular focus that you get then, because heads of school need to make sure that schools keep running so that everyone does their service and does their teaching. And perhaps that also then means that there's quite a bit of focus on that, to what extent people are good citizens. And I'll get back to that in a minute. Also, in terms of gender composition, the panel that I'm part of, it's quite balanced in terms of gender composition. If anything, there are more women on it than men. So what I would like to do is maybe I had a look at some of the questions that were submitted earlier. I'll speak to some of them, but I'll also add a few other things in there that I often advise people to take note of when they're thinking of promotion. And I have 10 points, so let me just start with going through them. So the first one, and that is in response to a question that was submitted. How do you know when you're ready to apply for promotion? My answer is probably you're not a very good judge of that yourself. So you don't really know whether you're ready. So you only know whether you're ready by talking to many, many people about when you're ready. But it's not just talking to them, but it's also listening to them. And I guess that falls under what Sharon called do your research. Because it is very often that I feel that of course, everyone wants to go for promotion. You need to pick your right moment, and other people ask them to walk through it with you. Look at the criteria, look what is needed, and how do you meet it, and listen to them. If they say you're not ready, then have that discussion, and don't get defensive, but just try and work on it. That is actually leading to my second point. That is that sometimes I feel that people are only talking about promotion or starting that conversation way too late when they say, hey, I want to actually in 2 months time I want to go and apply for a promotion. Do you think that's a good idea? And sometimes it is. Certainly sometimes you're more like, hey, yeah, sure, you could have already gone last year because I think you're a strong case. But sometimes it also happens that you think, yeah, you got a strong case on a couple of criteria, but hey, on these criteria, the last couple of years, you may not have done quite the right thing to get you ready for that one. You're not exactly sort of ticking the box. So start talking very early to people about that. If you just got promoted to level B, start now talking about all your mentors, all your peers, and also your head of school, your supervisors, about what do I need to do to get to the next level. Even though it may still take a couple of years, you need to start planning now, and you need to start being quite strategic about how to actually make sure that you get there, and when you go up, that you actually get that promotion. So the third one would be that I would really recommend read the criteria. And that sounds like an obvious one, but I'm sometimes still quite surprised that people don't read the criteria, or seeing applications where people are not talking to the criteria that tell a story, but it's not one that is sort of giving all the information that is needed. And then that leads to confusion in a selection panel, in a promotion panel, where they try and work it out, but it's not a good look. But at the same time, I would also like to say it's not a box ticking exercise. Of course, you need to tick those boxes, but there is so much more to it. And that is basically what brings me to the fourth point. And Sharon talked about that. She talked about having a story. You need a narrative. And that is incredibly important. Sometimes you do see applications where people are very good at ticking all the boxes, saying how they speak to the selection criteria or the promotion criteria, but there's just nothing that hangs together. Even as a reader, you have difficulty sort of processing it because it's just, there's not a story there, there's not a narrative. And other people are really good at that, even though you're tired and you've already read so many applications and you read this one and you think, yep, I get it. I get it. Yes, I understand what you're doing. I understand where you're coming from. And importantly, I see where you're going, right? That future perspective, that future oriented what Sharon talked about is so incredibly important. Again, I don't want to labor the point, but it is indeed about not some promotion is not a reward for past achievement. It is very much are you actually already performing at that next level, but also look at it from the university perspective. What are you going to do that is so wonderful? And you're clearly on an upward trajectory, but is that going to continue? And how are you going to continue that? That leads to the fifth point, again, one that Sharon already talked about. I guess perhaps for promotion to level B, to level C, it's not so much about leadership yet. It's really about being a great researcher, being a great teacher, being a good citizen, all of those things. But especially for level D promotion and certainly for level E promotion, it's all about leadership. It's all about vision. And again, what Sharon said, it's not just about sitting on a committee and rocking up in time for that committee. It's not ticking that box. It's about the way that you talk about it. And I thought there were some great suggestions from Sharon how to make a case. But I think also for yourself, if you join a committee, think about how that aligns with your passion. Think about what you're going to do, what kind of impact you're hoping to have. And then it makes sense. It's clear that it's not just strategic. Hey, I want to show some leadership. Leadership is not something you do while you're actually meeting with that committee in that 1 hour time. There's so much more to it. And again, level E in particular is all about leadership and research, service, and teaching. It's about how to do much more than ticking those boxes and doing more than just doing your job. And those things are incredibly difficult because it's not a box ticking exercise. What do you need to do to really show that leadership or say that, yes, I have that leadership, I have that vision? Again, that's why you need mentors. That's what you need supervisors for, who can tell you whether you're actually on track there, or are you approaching the topic in a wrong way? A sixth one is one that is perhaps a bit strange to bring up, but what I noticed is that sometimes you really love candidates who are passionate. All of you are passionate about the work you're doing, but sometimes we feel if we are walking into an interview that we just have to, a little bit tense. Everyone understands that you're nervous, but that we just sort of drop that. We need to be professional, not passionate. And I love the candidates who come and they just sort of ask them a question about the research, and they really, they start talking, and you see the passion, you see that this is their life. This is very important. It's not, and maybe it's attractive to watch, right? It makes it much more interesting for the panel to listen to, but it's also, it ticks all of these other boxes. You show leadership, you show energy, you show vision, you want to go things, you want to do more, you're passionate about, you just can't wait to do more and to have more of an impact in your field. So those are really, don't hide that passion. It's a great thing to bring in. And again, don't forget, on the panel, it's always other academics, heads of school, but they're all nerds like you. And what they want is just tell me something that you're doing and that you're passionate about. And then sometimes you get the whole room being excited about something. And that's a great feeling, and that really helps you. Then number 7 is prepare for the interview. No one is good at interviewing, but those who are prepared are clearly much better at it. And what I typically say to anyone going into an interview, whether it's for selection, for promotion, you need to do a mock interview, get some colleagues together, and let's treat it as an official interview. But also sometimes you have to start, when you go in the room, meet the panel, you have to give a 5-minute overview of your work. Practice that. Don't try and work it out on the spot. It really needs to be the best 5 minutes that you can give. And again, you need others that tell you whether your balance is right, whether you're saying the right things. It's not about having the right answers or the wrong ones, but it is showing evidence that you really have reflected and show insights and being thoughtful about all of that. I'm running out of time, but I just have a few more. Be quick. In an interview, well, of course, you want to come across as competent, but you also want to come across as a nice person, or maybe nice person is not the right word, but being a good citizen, being a team player, being a great colleague. And perhaps that's because I'm on on a panel with all heads of school, and because service is so incredibly important to keep schools running. There's not so much invisibility of service. If anything, we pay a lot of attention to service. And so selfishness doesn't really get rewarded on a panel that I'm on. But again, try and work that out. Try and understand your audience. Number 9, don't get defensive when people ask you critical questions about, hey, are you meeting the criteria? Just be prepared for all of that so you don't have to be defensive. And then the final one, especially, I guess, for women, there's always this question about, well, I feel that I'm coming back from maternity leave. I have caring responsibilities. All these personal circumstances that meant that relative to opportunity, you feel perhaps that, hey, that's important to take into account. Or another big one for promotion is, of course, if you've been on fixed term contracts, well, that limits, what you can apply for in terms of grant funding. It really means that you have a very short-term window, and you cannot think big and you cannot think long-term. All of those things, I would say, don't shy away from bringing that in and making that very clear. Of course, don't be defensive about it, but just sort of mention it so that relative to opportunity is being taken into account. And in my experience, panels nowadays are incredibly sensitive to that. So I want to end on that positive note. All right. Sorry, Sharon, for going a little bit over.
No, fabulous. Thank you so much, Yolanda. Beautiful insights there, and some questions have come up as a result. But I'd like now, Amy Tian, I can't see you, so I'm very much hoping you are there somewhere.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, fantastic, Amy. So we just need to get the camera onto you. So if we can, I think if Isabel and Elena can get the camera onto you. But Amy, please, let's not waste any time. Delighted, I've introduced you already. Oh, there you are, beautiful. So share with us your experience, your tips. That would be fantastic.
Great, thank you. So I was just noting down, Yolanda, your 10 points there. I've got 5. My 5 matched to your 10 already. So my first one was when to apply. I would typically say don't wait. So my reason for saying that is from my role being sitting on promotion panel internally here at Curtin University, as well as external reviewer for promotions. Sometimes you can see there are people who are clearly long overdue for promotion. It is something that internal promotion is a process that you have to apply. No one will give it to you. So you have to making sure that you take that step yourself. right? And it is an awful process. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, right? Like it is an awful process because you have to go through months of preparation and then months of waiting, not knowing what's the result. So my second point there is understand the promotion framework, which matches to read the criteria. Understand the framework is really, really useful because you know how your performance is being evaluated in your institution, because every single institution values things slightly different, even though we use the same teaching and learning and research and engagement, but how the promotion panel will value them will very often contextualize based on the institutional requirement. And so you really need to understand what your university is looking for. So relating to that, my third point is understand the promotion process in your institution. So I know you just mentioned, who to speak to. There's understand the promotion process in your institution involves several things. One is you should be able to find out who's sitting on different level of promotion panels in your university. So for example, at Curtin University, if you are applying to B or C, it's a decision that promotion panel at the faculty level can decide. But if you are applying for D and E, it goes to the university level promotion panel. So the reason why you need to know that is who to ask for feedback, right? That goes back to when to apply, do not wait. You can ask around, but you have to ask the right person, the right people for feedback. One of the questions I often had when I was mentoring the junior colleagues, they often say they receive conflict feedbacks. So they share their promotion applications, they receive very conflict feedback, and they don't know how to deal with it. And then the first question I will ask them is, who have you asked? Right. So if you don't just ask people who you think who are senior than you need to ask people who have experience in the promotion process, right? Whether best in your own university, if not, but at least some promotion experience elsewhere as well. So knowing who sit on those panels, you can actually ask them. Often they'll be very happy to read it. And so again, at Curtin University, we have a lot of promotion workshops. They're really useful, and they explains the general process going through the promotion and how your promotion application will be rated, what rating will be used. And so, check if your university provides the same level of support in terms of the promotion process. So that would be my third point. My fourth point is you craft your application, promotion application. The reason why I'm saying that is you have to making sure your application is easy to read, because you're not the only one who's applying for promotion. The promotion panel will be reading a lot of applications at the same time. So you really have to make they work a lot easier, rather than they have to go into your application and seeking for information. Typically, I would say the promotion process, even though I said earlier, I don't want to sugarcoat the process, it's an awful process, but the promotion panel are often very, very positive, right? The promotion panel are often looking for what you have rather than what you don't have, right? The attitude is people are there to actively trying to promote you, because once you get to the promotion panel, you should have already received support from your head of school, from your PVCs, from your deans, right? You should have already demonstrated that you are okay to go up. People are not there to picking what you don't have, but you have to make their job easier. One way to do it is writing against those performance criteria, The second way to do it is to use benchmarking data. Typically, it would be better to use benchmarking data externally rather than internally. So for example, when I put in my promotion application, Sharon sent me this paper that's published in Australian Journal of Management. It's actually a benchmarking article about all business school, all levels. And so that was very lucky. So I used that. But I also did my own benchmarking. And what I did then is I looked at two ways of benchmarking. And so my performance against people in my field in G08 universities, and then my performance against people in my field in Australian Australian Technology Universities network, because that's Curtin's part of that. So I made sure to tell the panel, say, I'm already performing at the level E level, compare externally, both at G08 and NTO universities. So that made their job a lot easier to say, okay, I think maybe she's ready. My last point is really about the narratives here, right? So your promotion, I know, Yolanda, you just mentioned, it has to tell a story. It does. It really needs to tell a story. It's not a collection of achievement. It's great to showcase your achievement, but you have to write them in the way, how does it, how, and what impact you're making, right? So what difference are you making through your achievement? So typically for example, I think you mentioned about making the impact more pronounced. So let's say if you are sitting on some significant committees, you don't just write you're a committee member, but typically the way we tell people to write in their promotion panel is write what it is, so what sort of things you do, and then secondly, your role in it or your contribution in it, and the third part is what impact did you make, what difference did you make. So make it quite a systematic way to illustrate the impact. The final point
So Amy, sorry, I'm
see...
just going to interrupt you. Can you just be brief, because I want to get to a couple of questions. So just very quick last point.
Yep. The very last point is where I see people often don't do well, is the CV. You often have to attach your CV to your promotion application. People tend to use a generic CV, but that is actually one way you can guide your promotion panel back to your CV, saying, because you probably cannot fit everything into the promotion application, put in the CV and then guide your promotion panel to read the CV. So use your CV space wisely.
Thank you so much, Amy. Fantastic. And isn't it amazing without collusion how much sort of common message has come from our three presentations? But let's go to Annika, who's going to hit us with some questions. So yes. Welcome, Annika. Over to
you. First of all, I'm going to share the results from the Slido with you from the beginning. So the first question, I will apply for promotion and or competitive fellowship in the next 2 years. Most of our participants answer this with yes, or they're not exactly sure. So I'm sure they could take a lot of these tips and write all of them down to go for those promotions. And the second one was, I will be supporting someone applying for promotion and or competitive fellowship in the next 2 years. And there the picture is a little bit different. Do you have any thoughts on that, Sharon?
I guess probably just we do tend to have more junior people joining us on the call, so it probably makes sense that it looks a little bit like this, I think. Yeah.
All right, coming to the question. One question that came up in the questions that were sent to us before was, how do I get around a glass ceiling boss who you need to reference from, or who wants to keep everyone on a lower grade, or another one, what if your head of school doesn't support you? Maybe Yolanda, you want to go first?
Yeah, look, I think that's tricky. There is, of course, always a bottleneck bit with people who have to support you. I guess what I would say is that try and bring more people into the conversation then, right? Make it not just you versus that one person. Make sure that there are other people involved. Keep it, don't seek a conflict, but do try and get to the bottom of things and so that you can hopefully resolve things, that there's agreement in how to proceed.
Yeah, Amy?
So it depends on if the head of school is actually part of the voting process. So at Curtin, if the head of school says no, you can still put in your promotion application. So it won't stop you.
Having said that, having sat on the promotion committee for the whole university, so at those higher levels, if the head of department doesn't support you, it's very hard to get it promoted. I'm not saying it's impossible, because people understand that dynamics can come into play, but you would, again, need to do all the things that we've said around evidencing and comparing and showing where you're at, because the bar is a bit higher, because you're really having to say, actually, my head of school doesn't support me, but I am ready and I am here. So it's so I think those pieces of advice are good, but it's a tough one.
Yeah. All right. Another question was, is it possible to apply for promotion by skipping a level? For example, from A to C, if a promotion is successful when we negotiate salary for an upper step within the same level. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Jolene. Yeah, Amy. Sorry.
I was just about to say, I don't know if Curtin does it, but I do know UWA does. It's called accelerated promotion, but you do need to get the dean support first.
And I would say you need to just know what it is in your university, because this will be different. But certainly it is possible, and I think in most universities. But again, and I think, Yolanda, we chatted before, and your point about criterion, do you want to just make that point? It's a really good one.
Yeah, look, I think at UQ it's criterion based. I think if you can have make a strong case that you meet the criterion of that the level you want to go to. So there's that. And the other thing I want to say is that that's perhaps what we don't really see all that often, but what we do see very often is that people are perhaps not even at the increment points at the top of the scale of, say, level C before they go to D. And those things are always understood, right? Look, okay, they don't have to wait. They meet the criteria. We're happy to promote them. So all of that is possible.
Thank you so much for all your answers. Another question was, can you give advice for education-focused level C staff on how we can gear up for promotion to level D?
So it's for teaching focused, only for teaching focused, you say?
No, advice on education-focused level. Yeah, teaching focus.
Yeah, I guess, look, again, every university is different, but I'm very pleased to see that most universities now are very aware of the fact that you need to create pathways for teaching focused, and that needs to be a career in and of itself. So again, I would say just have a very good look at the criteria that are specific to teaching focused, and have those conversations with asking people advice, what you need to do to get that, across that next level.
Yep. Do you have anything to add, Amy?
I think that's a good one,
similar.
Annika. I think it comes back to just knowing your university and the criteria.
Yeah.
But maybe, Amy, I see one on there about finding a good mentor. How do you find a good mentor? And sorry, Annika, I've just encouraged people to also ask questions on the chat.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
So how do you find a good mentor, Amy?
How do you find a good mentor? Oh, that's a good question. I was lucky. I didn't find one. I just happened to have one. How do you find a good mentor? I guess you when you go to those promotion panel workshops, typically you will have people presenting from the past. I guess you can ask the past successful applicant as the mentor just for the promotion aspect, if that's what the mentor is referring to.
I would perhaps also add to that, look, it's you're using the word lucky, right? But sometimes I feel like you have a right to get a good mentor. And I think also I'm very aware of that now as head of school, that yes, that's a responsibility we have to mentor. And so I would reach out to your supervisor and let them help you in finding a good mentor, someone who can guide you on this trajectory.
Back to you, Annika.
Yeah. I'm trying to find questions that are not industry. Like, well, there's one question, like by people that are, let's say they don't have an academic background, and they break into research, or they come from a different background into research. Do you have any advice on that? Maybe we start with Yolanda.
Well, again, it comes back to that narrative, right? It comes back to what's my story? Where do I come from? Where do I want to go? And being very clear about relative to opportunity and turn that into something that is a plus, right? You have other experience outside of the university. And how is that actually helping you? Or why is that making you very attractive for promotion? And so it's about that narrative to develop that. Don't apologize
and
for any of
connecting,
that.
I think, yeah, and connecting it into the university mission too,
Yeah.
because I mean, we aren't an industry, we are a university. The university's got clear goals and mission, and one of them is about impact. So it may be that that's where that your narrative can focus, you know, around the potential impact that you can help enable and support and so on. So connecting your story to the university, that's important, because, and that comes back to that idea, I think, Yolanda, it is about service is really important. You know, you want people, whether you call it service or not, but you want people who are contributing to the greater good, and so that could be part of the way that you contribute to the greater good. There are a couple of nice questions about service, actually, in the chat. I don't know, Amy, if you've got any thoughts about service, and like somebody saying they're an affiliate and they've been told they need to demonstrate more service. Any thoughts on this whole issue of service?
I think service is absolutely critical, because it goes back to what Yolanda was saying, being a good citizen. Being a good citizen, you do have to engage in service. In terms of the service, I think it's useful when you write in the application is looking at your actual work allocation for service. So your promotion application needs to reflect your work allocation, right? So that needs to be quite clear. If you are teaching focused, then you write more about teaching, because typically if your service is only 10%, then there's only a limited service and engagement you can do. So just be a little bit more careful there.
And you might need to remind
against your work allocation.
Yeah, you might need to remind, you know, that, because again, people are reading these applications. You're fully conscious that you're you know, part-time or whatever, you've got a unique role or whatever, but you do have to remind the reader of that sometimes. Yeah. Yolanda, did you have any thoughts on that one?
No, I think no, I agree with that. That's a great response. Yeah.
And I think one of the responses has been, I would ask why more service is needing, because somebody, I think Laura is saying here, you know, I'm an affiliate and I've been told I need to demonstrate more service, you know. So yeah, I think that invests with that, coming at doing the research again. Why is more needed? What is needed? What are examples of other people who are affiliates who've been promoted? All of those sorts of things. And noting that you say in your question, I serve on committees. But again, it's more about what is the impact you're having on those committees. So I think some of the things we've been talking about today, Laura, I hope might help you, you know, think about that, and certainly getting the advice and consultation of others as well, not just relying on that single voice. I think can we squeeze in one more, Annika, super quickly?
I think we actually got through it quite well. You already included some of the questions in your presentation as well.
Okay.
Maybe
All
we
right, well,
could have
look,
like one final
one
takeaway.
final comment from Yolanda, your main tip, and one final comment from Amy, and then I'll wrap up. So Yolanda, one final word. This is hard.
Very hard. Look, I know it's stressful. It's incredibly stressful, but at the same time, I also feel sometimes it's really, you can build a new network of supporters around you. So do find those mentors, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Amy.
So I think for me is really pay quite detailed attention to your promotion application, because that's the only way the promotion panel gets to know you. Most of them don't know who you are. So making sure you spend a lot of time to craft the application.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I will just add my last comment. And this goes back to an earlier question about being tired. I think the person was effectively indicating the thought of having to do all this sort of makes them feel tired when you're already tired. So I want to end on the hoarding the homage to you, the H in my fresh model. So if you put those little accolades, comments, reviews, just do it as you go. So it's not such a big burden when it comes to pulling it together. And also it makes you feel good about yourself. So at this point, I just want to thank our wonderful panelists, Yolanda Yatton from UQ and Amy Tian from Curtin University. Thank you so much, Annika, for your masterful questions as usual. And I think our last session of the year will be on December on intersectionality. So absolutely love to see some of you again. I hope you found today useful. I certainly have always learned something myself from these sessions, and I hope you did too. So thank you all so much, and look forward to seeing you again, hopefully in our December session. And once again, fabulous participation on the chat. And thank you, guys.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Amy.
Sorry, I was a bit sick
you don't
today.
sound very well, you poor thing.
Yeah.
Oh.